But right now, we're going to talk with the host of Ringside Report, Wednesdays and Fridays, right here on TSN 990. You can go to ringsidereport.net, or you can check him out on twitter.com/DaveSimonMMA. It's Dave Simon.
Yes, it is.
That was very grandiose, Dave.
Yes, it's me.
It was almost like you patted yourself on the back there. That was good.
Well, it's, the Barry Horowitz self-pat on the back. Somebody's got to do it.
Dave, big weekend in MMA. It's always a big weekend in MMA, but in the ring or in the octagon and outside the octagon, we talked a little bit about it earlier with the John Jones situation. And just getting back to that, is there any bigger star right now in MMA than John Jones?
George St. Pierre? Maybe Anderson Silva? Jones is up there, though. I would say, he's one of the biggest stars in the sport right now. And, it's not great for his very clean image that he has had. But he has said in the past, look, I'm young, I like to go out, I like to have fun, and I like to drink. But he has never said that I also like to get behind the wheel after I drink. Man. So, this is something that is bad. You're not supposed to drink and drive. And he did that. And now he's going to have to suffer the consequences. He was arrested. He may face some sort of legal action, may get his license taken away, which would suck for him because he had a really nice Bentley that he smashed up. So, he's got enough money to afford nice cars, and maybe he won't be able to drive them. But I think that if you have a DUI and you were over the limit, I think you should have your license taken away. A car is a lethal weapon, and if not driven properly, it can be very, very bad. So I'm quite disappointed in John Jones, quite frankly, because I think there should be zero tolerance for drunk driving.
We talked about it earlier, how you thought that maybe the UFC wouldn't be so harsh on Jones in terms of sanctions or anything like that. Following this incident, we see what they do in the NFL, where there really is zero tolerance these days, and the commissioner hands down suspensions or lengthy or large fines when it comes to off-field trouble with the law type of situations. Forget what they won't do or will do. What would you do if you were the commissioner of the UFC and this came down?
I would call John Jones and I would say, what happened? And I would find out the story. And then I would say, okay, we need to deal with this through the media. You need to do damage control. And that's basically all I would do.
You wouldn't suspend him, you wouldn't fine him, you wouldn't do anything like that?
No, I mean, like I said, Dana White has said that, people are prone to make mistakes. Things happen, and people do make mistakes. I think that whatever should happen to John Jones should be dealt with through the legal system. As I said, if I were a judge in the case, I would take away his driver's license, but Dana White can't take away John Jones' driver's license. I don't think that this really has anything to do with the sport of mixed martial arts. It's an unfortunate situation. It's very disappointing to hear that John Jones would do such a stupid thing. But I wouldn't do anything to John Jones other than tell him to now go out and explain himself. He needs to explain himself and let people know that what he did was wrong, and maybe donate to some anti-drunk driving charities or something.
That kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So dealing with his actual fighting schedule, or what was supposed to be next with Jones, or what was he on track for?
September 1st against Dan Henderson is title defense.
And nothing's changing there so far?
No, not so far, and I don't think anything will. It's a big fight. People want to see it. There's no reason to not have that fight. I mean, it's May 20th. This happened yesterday morning at around 5 a.m. near his home in Endicott, New York, and I think that's where it should stay. I think it's an Endicott, New York problem. New York State will deal with John Jones, and that's it. I mean, as far as his fight, he's on track to fight Dan Henderson September 1st in Las Vegas, and I think that's exactly what will and should happen.
Dave Simon joining us here on Game Points with Matthew Ross. We're talking some MMA. Elsewhere, Dave, Strikeforce news.
Well, Josh Barnett and Daniel Cormier doing battle for 5 rounds last night in the heavyweight Grand Prix, and Daniel Cormier coming out victorious. I gave it 50-45, all 5 rounds to Cormier, dominating with his stand-up game and with his wrestling. Cormier is an Olympic-level wrestler, and he was able to throw Josh Barnett around like very few have before, if anyone. I don't think anyone's been able to out-wrestle Barnett like Cormier did last night. And also, this guy has taken to striking very, very well. He's got some very fast hands, and he moves around the octagon very, very fast. I was impressed with Daniel Cormier's overall game. This guy is a legitimate athlete, and now improves to 10-0. He's the Strikeforce Grand Prix champ.
What was your pick going in?
I had Barnett. I thought Barnett's experience would win this fight. He had 37 professional bouts in his career, 31 victories and only 5 losses, and those losses are to guys back in the Pride days, to Mirko Krokop, to Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. I mean, this is a guy that's been in the sport for a very long time, and I thought that he would have enough MMA tricks up his sleeve to take Daniel Cormier. That being said, I thought that Cormier had a really good shot at winning if he used his hands and outboxed Barnett, and he was able to do that. Barnett not able to use his range. He was a lot taller and a lot longer than Cormier, but Cormier was able to get on the inside, stick and move, and dominate the boxing game. I was very impressed with Daniel Cormier, and I think that, if it were maybe the Daniel Cormier we'd seen a year ago against Josh Barnett, it would have been a different story. But here's a guy who's only been fighting since 2009, who's steadily improving. He trains at the AKA gym in San Jose with former UFC heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez, so he's in the gym every day with one of the best guys in the world. And, iron sharpens iron, and there you go. These two guys looking very, very sharp, and I think it helps as well that Velasquez was also in fight camp mode, as he's going to be fighting Antonio Silva next week for the UFC.
Now, for this Grand Prix Strikeforce, we've talked about this in the past. Where does Cormier now go?
Cormier stays in Strikeforce. And I think what's going to be most interesting is, does Josh Barnett go over to the UFC? Josh Barnett is a former UFC heavyweight champion that left the company in disgrace after beating Randy Couture back in 2001. He had to leave after testing positive for steroids, and he said a lot of negative things about the UFC, about Dana White in the past, but they seem to have buried the hatchet in anticipation of Barnett perhaps winning the Grand Prix and being maybe the best heavyweight in the world. But now that he's lost, I really wonder if he will get signed by the UFC. I think he should. I think he still is one of the best in the world. But I think we'll have to wait and see whether or not he does sign. As for Cormier, based on the renewal deal that Strikeforce and Showtime signed, the winner of this Grand Prix will fight again once more in Strikeforce, and right. We'll have to wait and see who his opponent will be. Most likely it will not be Fedor Emelianenko, as we talked about the possibility of that last week, as Fedor this week saying that after he fights Pedro Rizzo in June, he's most likely going to retire. So he's probably going to have one more fight, and then that'll be it. So I don't expect it to be Fedor.
Could we see a rematch potentially if they really wanted to pump Barnett back to the UFC?
I think that a rematch would make sense. I think it was a very interesting fight, but Cormier did dominate. So, I mean, it would make sense to the fact that Barnett wasn't finished, and there were a couple instances in the fight where you thought maybe Barnett was going to pull it out. He had a knee bar. He laced up Cormier's leg in the 4th round, and it looked like he was going to submit Cormier, maybe with a heel hook, maybe with a knee bar, but Cormier was able to slip out of that. Once the 4th round comes, the guy's legs are very sweaty, so it's easy to slip out of leg locks and stuff like that. So I think there were instances where Barnett could have pulled it out, but it was such a domination from Cormier. I don't know if you really want to do a rematch of that fight, especially right away. I'd rather see Barnett go to the UFC and fight different guys, and maybe somebody else for Daniel Cormier, maybe somebody that's in the UFC right now that would maybe want to move over and fight a big fight in Strikeforce.